You're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Hi everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. On today's episode of the podcast, we review the second ODI between Australia and England from the SCG. It's the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast, and let's get started. Let's have a look at the match summary from the second ODI between Australia and England from the SCG. Australia batted first and made 8 for 280 from their 50 overs. Steve Smith top scored with 94 off 114 balls. Adil Rashid took 3 wickets for England. England needed 281 runs to win. They finished on 208 all out from 38.5 overs. Sam Billings top scored with 71. Adam Zampa and Mitchell Starc took 4 wickets each for Australia. Australia won by 72 runs and Mitchell Starc was named Player of the Match. What were the key moments and key factors from this second ODI between Australia and England? The partnerships of 101 for the 3rd wicket between Smith and Labuschagne and 90 for the 5th wicket between Smith and Mitchell Marsh were key in getting Australia to their score of 8 for 280 from their 50 overs. Australia's bowling to have England under pressure early at 2 for none inside the first over. The partnership between Vince and Billings of 122 for the 4th wicket helped England get back on track in the run chase. Josh Hazlewood getting James Vince out for 60, LBW, which saw England have a batting collapse of 4 for 13 in 3 overs, which turned the match in Australia's favour to win by 72 runs and to lead the series 2-0. Those were the key moments and key factors from this second ODI at the SCG. Let's have a look at both teams' performances in this second ODI at the SCG with both bat and ball. We'll start with Australia and their batters. Warner, 16, Head, 19, Smith, 94, Labuschagne, 58, Carey, 0, Mitchell Marsh, 50, Stoinis, 13, and Ashton Agar, 18, not out. That's how the Australian batters went about things in this second ODI against England from the SCG. Australia's batting was good in this second ODI against England at the SCG. Batting first was a good option as this SCG wicket was slow, dry, and taking turn, and wasn't easy to force the pace on. 8 for 280 from their 50 overs was a good score from Australia, and in the end, it was a winning score. Australia lost 2 early wickets in the innings, Warner for 16 and Head for 19, the opening partnership that worked so well in Adelaide. Unfortunately, didn't quite get going in game number 2 of the series. Australia were 2 for 43 inside 9 overs, but Steve Smith and Marnus Labuschagne got Australia back on course in the innings. They added 101 for the 3rd wicket partnership. Much needed partnership for Australia to get them back on track after losing Warner and Head early. Then Labuschagne got out for 58. Then next ball, Alex Carey went for a golden duck. And Australia were still in trouble at 4 for 144 inside 27.5 overs. But then Steve Smith combined with Mitchell Marsh and got Australia back out of trouble and got them back going again in the innings. Smith and Marsh added 90 runs for the 5th wicket partnership. Now, Australia was struggling to accelerate the innings towards the back end of the innings. The SCG pitch was slow, dry, and taking turn. The square was quite dry and barren. The England bowlers got a bit of reverse swing as well. So very difficult for new batters to come in and play the big shots and to accelerate their innings. It wasn't easy, but Mitchell Marsh, his innings of 50 or 59 balls, plus some late order hitting from Ashton Agar, 18 not out, got Australia to a competitive total of 8 for 280 from their 50 overs. A good score on a surface that was slow, dry, and taking turn, and difficult to force the pace on here at the SCG. So a very good effort indeed from the Australian batters to get to that score of 280. In the end, as I mentioned, it was a match-winning score. So Australia's batting, as I mentioned, in this ODI, this second ODI of the series, was pretty good. and it was good to see Australia back up their performance from Adelaide. Let's talk about some of the batters and how they performed. Let's talk about Steve Smith, first of all. Definitely back in business, Steve Smith. Definitely back. He batted well again. Back-to-back 50s in the series. He scored an 80-odd in Adelaide, but he got 94 in the second game here in Sydney. Obviously, didn't quite get the century. 94 off 111 balls was a pretty good innings from him. But it was also a key innings for Australia, and he held the innings together nicely for Australia. Australia lost 2 early wickets in Warner and Head. Needed someone to make sure there was some stability and some order in the innings, and also in the batting performance as well. And Steve Smith did that. He anchored the innings well. This is what Steve Smith does well. Anchors the innings quite nicely. Everyone bats around him. He does his role. He looks in good touch. His timing, his fluency, his rhythm, the way he's batting at the moment. Ominous signs for the opposition for the remainder of this Australian summer. Once we get into the Test summer with the West Indies and South Africa, they won't be liking the look of Steve Smith at the moment because he's really batting well and he is really in good touch. So another good innings from Steve Smith. I thought Marnus Labuschagne batted well for his 58. Made good use of another opportunity presented to himself. Hasn't really cemented his spot in this one-day team, Marnus Labuschagne. And his one-day career is a little bit indifferent to his Test career, obviously. Wonderful Test player, Marnus. One-day cricket, he's yet to grasp it yet. But 58 off 55 balls. He had a good partnership with Steve Smith. He would have been disappointed to get out when he did, playing a sweep shot that caught the toe end of the bat and went straight to mid-off. But nonetheless, a good innings from Marnus. Mitchell Marsh, I thought he batted well. Mitchell Marsh came in for his first game of the series. 50 off 59 balls. His innings was important to accelerate the innings for Australia towards the back end of the innings, which he did. I thought he batted well. Good to see Australia's top order not collapsing for a change. They lost 2 early wickets in Warner and Head. They built partnerships nicely to keep the innings together. So, very good batting again from Australia. The top order doing their job. No batting collapses, which is a big tick for Australia. As we've seen in the series against Zimbabwe and New Zealand early on in the summer, they had batting collapses. Whereas now in this series against England, the top order is starting to get things together and starting to bat well together. So that's good signs for Australia. And also, just to finish off on the batting performance, it was good practice for Australia to bat on a pitch that was slow, dry and taking turn. Now this wicket here at the SCG was very difficult to force the pace on. It was slow, it was dry. There was a bit of turn there for the spinners. Reverse swing as well. So similar to Indian conditions that could be faced during the World Cup next year. I think it was good practice for Australia to play on a pitch that was a bit slow, taking turn, not really easy to time the ball. So that's good preparation for Australia going forward to the 50-over World Cup next year in India. So overall, it was good batting performance from Australia. Let's have a look at the Australian bowlers and their performance in this second ODI at the SCG against England. No wickets for Mitchell Marsh, Stoinis and Ashton Agar. 2 wickets for Hazlewood and 4 wickets for Starc and Zampa. That's how the Australian bowlers went about things in this second ODI against England. I thought Australia's bowling was very good again, as it was in Game 1. It was very good in Game 2. Bowling England out for 208 inside 38.5 overs was a good effort from Australia. It was a very good bowling performance. They had England in trouble early. 2 for none England were inside the first over. And that was all thanks to Mitchell Starc's brilliant bowling, which put England on the back foot. So it was very good from Australia to really put the pressure on England in that first over of the run chase. Mitchell Starc definitely did that, really set the tone. But then James Vince and Sam Billings rebuilt the innings, I should say, for England. They added 122 for the 4th wicket. And that partnership was slowly but truly getting England back into the match. But the Australian bowlers hung in there. They kept bowling well. They kept toiling hard to break the partnership. And that's what you need to do as a bowling group, is that you really need to stick to your plans and just hope that one ball will bring the wicket. And eventually for Australia it did. Josh Hazlewood got the breakthrough. Obviously Josh Hazlewood, the stand-in skipper for Game 2 of the series, because Pat Cummins was rested. So Hazlewood was given the responsibility of captain. And Hazlewood, he got that breakthrough that Australia needed. He got James Vince out for 60, LBW. That started a batting collapse from England, which saw England lose 4 for 13 in 3 overs. And obviously, eventually, England were bowled out for 208, as we mentioned earlier, from 38.5 overs. And pretty much that wicket, the batting collapse, really swung the game in Australia's favour. Mitchell Starc and Adam Zampa caused most of the damage in that batting collapse that England had when they lost 4 for 13 in 3 overs. It was mainly Mitchell Starc and Adam Zampa that got Australia back into this match. I thought Australia's bowling was pretty good, did the basics well with the ball. They bowled good lines and lengths, applied the pressure onto the England batters throughout the innings. They bowled dot balls to build pressure. They took wickets at regular intervals throughout the England innings. So it was a pretty good bowling performance from Australia. Yet again, as it was in Adelaide, a pretty good performance. They backed it up nicely here in Sydney. Let's talk about Mitchell Starc. I thought Mitchell Starc bowled very well in this match. 4 for 47 from 8 overs was a pretty good spell from him. He bowled very well. He bowled a very good first over to set the tone for the run chase. He got the ball to swing and move away, got rid of Jason Roy for the first wicket, got him out, caught down the leg side, strangled down the leg side by Alex Carey for a duck, and then he got rid of Dawood Malan. He got him out for a duck, bowled, and it's a wonderful delivery that he bowled to Dawood Malan, one that just came back in and just knocked over Malan's stumps. The Centurion from Adelaide was dismissed. England were 2 down for none after the first over. That pretty much set the tone for Australia with the bowling performance. And Mitchell Starc, it's good to see Mitchell Starc bowling well. This is what he can do. He can get the ball to swing, move at pace. A very good bowler, Mitchell Starc, and good to see him getting some wickets and bowling well. Let's talk about Adam Zampa. I thought he was exceptional again. 4 for 45 from 9.5 overs. He's a very good leg spinner. He's probably one of the best leg spinners we've got in ODI and T20 cricket. Just keeps doing his job. Keeps taking wickets when needed for Australia. And him and Mitchell Starc in this game pretty much got Australia this victory. Obviously, the partnership between Vince and Billings was taking this game away from Australia. Hazlewood broke that partnership, as we mentioned, but it was mainly Mitchell Starc and Adam Zampa that caused the batting collapse from England. England lost 4 for 13, and mainly it was Mitchell Starc and Adam Zampa who took those wickets to really put England on the back foot and really swing the game back into Australia's favour. So I thought both of them bowled well. The other Australian bowlers did their job. Obviously, Marsh, Stoinis, Agar didn't take a wicket, but they did their job. Josh Hazlewood, the stand-in skipper, did well for 2 wickets. And obviously, Starc and Zampa were by far 2 of the best Australian bowlers in this bowling performance in game number 2. So overall, it was a good bowling performance from Australia. And overall, it was a good team performance from Australia. Let's have a look at England's team performance with both bat and ball in this second ODI at the SCG. We'll start with their batters. Roy, 0. Salt, 23. Malan, 0. Vince, 60. Billings, 71. And Ali, 10. That's how the England batters went about things in game number 2 against Australia. England's batting in game number 2 was poor here at the SCG in game number 2 of the series. Chasing 281 was always going to be a challenge for England on a pitch that was slow, dry, and taking turn. The ball was reversing a little bit as well here at the SCG. So it was always going to be a challenge for England chasing 281. England in trouble early, 2 for none basically inside the first over. Jason Roy gone for a duck, caught by Carey, bowled by Starc. Then the Malan wicket was key for Australia. Dawood Malan soon went for a duck himself, got clean bowled by Mitchell Starc. The Centurion from Adelaide was gone. England under pressure, 2 down for none inside the first over. Mitchell Starc bowled a very good first over from Australia's point of view. England under pressure from the get-go. So England reeling under pressure at 2 for none. Then James Vince and Sam Billings rebuilt the England innings. England needed to rebuild, and they went about doing that, all thanks to Vince and Billings' partnership. And the pair added 122 for the 4th wicket, which was the highest partnership for England and also the highest partnership of the match. that was starting to get England back on track in the run chase to chase down 281. But then James Vince got out LBW to Hazelwood for 60. That triggered a batting collapse from England. Sam Billings was the key wicket for Australia after that Vince wicket. And he was also the key for England to keep them in the game. He was on 71. He was batting well. You needed someone who was in and set. This wicket wasn't easy for new batters to come in and really force the pace on. It was slow. It was taking turn. The ball was reversing a bit. So very difficult for new batters to get in and get accustomed to that. So that's why Sam Billings was the important cog in the England batting lineup. After James Vince got out, he needed to get England home, basically. He couldn't do that. He got out soon after for 71, bowled by Adam Zampa. Then England lost wickets at regular intervals, didn't build partnerships, couldn't recover, had a massive batting collapse. They lost 4 for 13 in 3 overs, which turned the match into Australia's favour. Mitchell Starc and Adam Zampa did most of the damage in the batting collapse, where England lost 4 for 13 in 3 overs. And that's where the game really turned in Australia's favour, really. And as I mentioned, England couldn't get back into the match, unfortunately. England's batting hasn't really got going in this whole series. In Adelaide, it was poor. In game number 2 here in Sydney, they had a batting collapse and it was poor again. So their batting hasn't really fired throughout this series. So for England going into game 3, they really have to look at trying to address the problems they have with their batting. Because at the moment, it's not really firing as they would have liked in this series thus far. Obviously, during this batting performance, the couple of positives that England had with the bat was James Vince, of course, 60 off 72 balls. James Vince making the most of his opportunity in this one-day side for England, seeing that England are playing their second 11. There's no Bairstow, there's no Root. So a perfect opportunity for him to really show the selectors what he's made of. Same with Sam Billings. 71 he made off 80 balls. Took his opportunity. Those two, Vince and Billings, really batted well. And they were the only 2 England batters that really looked comfortable at the crease. They were scoring runs at a good rate. The partnership of 122 was scoring at a good strike rate. Unfortunately, when they got out, it just caused a batting collapse from England, and that's where they lost the game, losing 4 wickets for 13 runs inside 3 overs. They couldn't recover from that, and they were always on the back foot after that batting collapse. I thought with their batting, there were a couple of players that would have been disappointed with their missed opportunities. Jason Roy again got out for a duck. He looks horribly out of form. He needs to take these opportunities because he's been given another opportunity in this England one-day side. If he wants to be a part of the World Cup next year in India, well, he's got to be scoring some runs quickly. Phil Salt, he got 23 tonight in this game. Another missed opportunity for him. He was really playing well up until he got out, so he just threw it away there. So a couple of missed opportunities there for England with the batting, I thought. But overall, it was a indifferent batting performance from England in game number 2 of the series against Australia. Let's have a look at the England bowlers and their performance in game number 2 of this ODI series against Australia at the SCG. No wickets for Sam Curran and Dawson, 2 wickets for Wokes and Willie, a wicket for Ali, and 3 wickets for Rashid. That's how the England bowlers went about things in game number 2 of the series. I thought England's bowling was much improved compared to game 1 in Adelaide. Obviously for England, they welcomed back Sam Curran, Chris Wokes, Adil Rashid for game number 2 of the series. So definitely game number 2 was their better bowling performance, unlike in Adelaide where they played their second string attack and didn't really quite bowl well in Adelaide. But game 2 of the series, they bowled very well. Really bowled well to the conditions here in Sydney. They would have been happy to keep Australia 8 for 280 after their 50 overs. I think if you keep a side under 300 in one-day cricket, you must be very happy with the bowling performance there. And I think England would have been happy about their work. As I mentioned, they bowled pretty well. They got their main attack back for game 2, as I mentioned. Obviously, Wokes and Rashid and Sam Curran coming back into the side really strengthened the bowling lineup. They bowled well on a pitch that was slow and dry and taking turn, which is quite unusual at the SCG. Seeing a wicket that's dry, slow, taking turn, there was a bit of reverse swing. The wicket wasn't easy for batting, and we saw that from both sides throughout the whole game. But the England bowlers bowled really well, and they really bowled well to the conditions. I thought, all of them really used the conditions well. They recognised, they adapted what they needed to do on this type of surface. As I mentioned, they bowled well on this surface. They took wickets at regular intervals. They bowled dot balls, which was the key to keep the pressure on the Australian batters at times. They bowled a good line and length. But I think England will be a little bit disappointed. Towards the back end of the innings, they leaked a few runs at the death. They had Australia 5 for 234 inside 43.3 overs when Steve Smith was dismissed. They could have kept Australia below maybe 250 or maybe a score of 250 plus or something like that. But in the end, Australia got away from them a bit and got 280 in the end. All thanks to Mitchell Marsh and Ashton Agar, who went out and got some runs towards the end of the innings for Australia. So I think England would be disappointed about that. They couldn't really restrict Australia below or just over that 250 score. In the end, 280 was a very difficult target to chase, obviously, given the slow nature of the surface, given that you can't really try and force the pace on this surface. It was slow, the ball was swinging, reverse swinging, there was some turn for the spinners. Didn't help that England had a batting collapse. So it was always going to be difficult for England to chase down those runs, given the conditions and given how the Australian bowlers bowled. And they would have been very disappointed to leak those runs at the end, and they did. They could have kept Australia down to 250 at one stage. But at the end of the day, it wasn't to be. But a much better bowling performance from England in Game 2 compared to what happened in Adelaide in Game number 1 of the series. So overall, it was a good bowling performance from England, and overall, it was a inconsistent team performance from England in Game number 2 of the series against Australia. Let's preview the third ODI of the series between Australia and England from the MCG. Talk about the potential 11s for both teams and who's going to win this third ODI. Let's have a look at both teams' ODI record at the MCG between Australia and England over the years. First ODI between the two countries was the first ever ODI to be played in the history of one-day cricket. It was back here in 1971. They've played 23 matches, no ties. Australia lead the head-to-head, 16 wins to England's 7. Let's have a look at Australia's third ODI potential 11 for the last game of the series. Now, I think Australia will make probably one change to their 11 for the third ODI at the MCG. I think Pat Cummins will definitely come back, obviously. He was rested for Game 2, so therefore Australia may make a change, and I think Mitchell Starc may get a rest for the last game of the series. Obviously, the series is already won. Australia's already wrapped up the series with one to play. Obviously, for Australia, they've got a very big test summer ahead. Mitchell Starc will be a very important cog in the Australian test team for the test series against the West Indies, which is coming up at the end of the month, and also the test series against South Africa. So I think he could be rested from the last game of the series. So I think Pat Cummins will come in for Mitchell Starc. So Australia's potential 11 for the third ODI could be Warner, Head, Smith, Labuschagne, Carey, Mitchell Marsh, Stoinis, Ashton Agar, Cummins, Zampa, and Hazelwood. That could be Australia's potential 11 for the third ODI. Let's have a look at England's potential 11 for the third ODI of this series against Australia. Now, I think England will make one change to their 11 for the third ODI at the MCG. Obviously, Josh Buttler rested himself from Game 2 of the series. Moeen Ali was captain for Game 2 of the series. So definitely Buttler will come back for the last game. For who? I think he'll come back for Moeen Ali. So I think Moeen Ali to miss out, Buttler to come in and replace Moeen Ali for the last game of the series for England. So England's potential 11 for the third ODI could be Roy, Salt, Milan, Vince, Billings, Buttler, Wokes, Sam Curran, Dawson, Willie, and Rashid. That could be England's potential 11 for the third ODI. Now, who's going to win this third and final ODI of the series? Well, with Australia leading the series 2-0, you think Australia should win this last game and should win the series 3-0. As we've seen from Australia throughout this series, they've been playing some good cricket. They've definitely batted and bowled well. Compared that to England, their batting has been a bit scratchy. Their bowling's been a bit inconsistent. So based on that, they've got the momentum, they've already wrapped up the series, I think Australia should win this final game at the MCG and wrap up the series 3-0. What can we expect from both teams heading into the third ODI at the MCG? Australia will be looking to win this series 3-0 after winning the first two games, but they will be still looking at some areas of their game to improve on with both bat and ball. England will be looking to finish off this series on a winning note. Thus far in the series, their batting and bowling hasn't really got going, and they will be looking to fix that in the final game at the MCG. In the end, it was a convincing victory from Australia by 72 runs and take a 2-0 series lead with one game still to play at the MCG. Australia did well to get to 8 for 280 on a pitch that was taking turn and was a bit slow. That was down to another good innings from Steve Smith, 94 off 111 balls. England were in trouble early on, at 2 for none after the first over. James Vince and Sam Billings added 122 for the fourth wicket, and gave England a chance. But a batting collapse from England, which saw them lose 4 for 13 in 3 overs, decided the game in Australia's favour. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. Be sure to subscribe and click the bell to get the latest episodes of the podcast, and like and share our Facebook page, and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Until next time, keep safe, and bye for now.